Well, hello, fine, good afternoon all. This is Patricia and I'm traveling for history. I'm in Burlington, Vermont, and in front of us today is what's left of Burlington High School. The building right in front of us here is C Building. C Building is where English and history courses were taught, at least predominantly. Now, the first floor was where both departments shared office space. I'm guessing it was probably 2 classrooms wide, so it was actually on the other side of the building on the first floor. The left side of the offices was the history department, and on the right side was the English department. The teachers had cubicles. The department chairs had offices. So John Kane, Mr. Kane, was the department chair of the history department, and Miss White, Miss Lucille White, was the department chair of the English department. And they had offices with doors that closed. I presume they locked as well. Wanted to talk about some of the teachers I both had and just knew. And I knew them because I had sold the school newspaper 10 cents a pop back then. I wonder what they charge nowadays, because I know the school newspaper is still around. It's the BHS Register. Anyhow, let's start with English teachers. So, in no particular order, I had a teacher. Oh, by the way, all my English teachers are dead now. May they rest in peace. So, let's see. I had Miss Elmer, Dorothy Elmer. I know she taught poetry, and she taught British literature, and maybe I had her for that. But I remember the poetry piece quite well because she loved teaching poetry. She adored poetry. She would jump around in excitement as she was teaching it. I had to say, as a high schooler, I was embarrassed. Good God, I was embarrassed about so many things. It was just kind of stupid. But anyhow, she would get all excited. Having been an instructor myself, I understand now being excited about teaching something. You know what I mean? Hindsight. She was a good teacher. By the way, I had liked Miss Elmer, even if she were quirky. I think quirks are some of the best fun of a person. This was the only class I had with her, by the way. And as I said, all I remember of the class was the poetry part. I don't even remember what we read. But let me zoom in on the building a bit better for you. I had Miss O'Brien. There was a Mrs. O'Brien and a Miss O'Brien. Now, Mrs. O'Brien retired maybe the year before I started going to high school. She was a substitute teacher, though. Now, Miss O'Brien was also the drama club director, and she expected you to hop too. Liked her, though. I had at least 2 classes with her. I remember we covered Chaucer. What was it, the Canterbury Tales? I think that's what it was. And as I recall, we had to stand up and sort of act out a part. Kind of nifty. By the way, in drama club, I was mainly stage crew. I was only in one play, and that was enough for me. Anyhow, Miss O'Brien was, did I say she was quirky? Yeah, she was quirky. Now, before she was my teacher, and shortly after her father died, I heard stories about her about trying to, she would go a little bat crap crazy if someone said they were going to step on a leprechaun. Yeah, Irish heritage. I did not experience that with her. She died pretty recently in 2021. Unfortunately, she had Alzheimer's at the end. And she lived to see 90-something. 93? I think maybe 93. Son of a gun. Anyhow. Let's see. Another teacher I had. Another English teacher, yeah. I had Mrs. Eycroft, Joan Eycroft. I think she lived to see 91, maybe 92. Have to say, not my favorite teacher. Didn't like her at all. She had an attitude that was very off-putting. That she always acted as if she were the smartest one in the classroom. No doubt she would be. She was the teacher. She was the adult in the room. And even worse, this whole "I'm better than you" attitude. Ay, gosh. I don't know what she was like with fellow teachers or family or friends. I only know how she interacted with us as students. Now, let's be clear also that she was heavy. I was going to say not thin, but I mean, she was heavy. Quite heavy. And, of course, I've always been fat myself. So I remember I was late to class once, huffing and puffing because I ran. She was on the second floor, on the far right side over here. Can't see her classroom because it's obscured by trees. But, yeah, so she wanted me to stay after class that day. Totally understand. I forgot. And it was the last class before it's time to leave for the day. Shucks gee whiz. So I left. Remembered when I was already downstairs and halfway down the hall. Oh, so I ran. Again. Huffing and puffing and all that stuff. And, you know, it's pretty galling when someone who's fat tells you should lose weight. How about you first? Know-it-all. Holier than thou. Better than others. And for those of you who had great experiences with her, I'm thrilled for you. Oh, and one more piece. Because. As long as I dislike her, I may as well share this as well. So, we had taken the midterm exam, and this was our first day back after that. She told us that, well, let me back up just a moment. There was a student in class who did very well, straight A student. She was smart, clearly, and but not a know-it-all. You know, the student was very friendly and all that good stuff. Pretty sure her first name was Dawn, but I don't remember her last name at all. This would have been sophomore year, so yeah. So on the midterm, she said that she was, Mrs. Eycroft said that she was correcting our exams, and people kept missing this question on the exam, this one question. All of us. She said, even Dawn missed it. And if she missed it, I'm guessing I didn't read this to you. And then as she was explaining what it was, I thought, oh, that rings a very distant bell. I want to say it was a book by Isaac Asimov, but I guess don't quote me on that. If anyone else remembered, no one said anything because she decided to give us those points back that she took off. Alrighty. By the way, on my website, travelingforhistory.com, I'll have their obituaries on my website. You can read them. And I want to thank a friend of mine who shared her yearbooks with me because I have photographs. Granted, they are old. More than 40 years ago. But they really bring back these teachers completely. So on to a couple of teachers I didn't know. I mean, I didn't have as teachers in the classroom, but I knew them. So there was a Miss Akins, Millie Akins. I knew her because I sold newspapers to her. And I found her genuine. And she had I don't know, like a glint in her eye. I think she really enjoyed teaching. And then there was Miss Lucille White, the woman who's the department chair of the English department. Didn't have her in class either. The only course she taught was the Bible as literature, and I didn't take that. She was always kind of, admittedly she kind of scared me. What can I say? She was, as I recall, she was kind of tall. I've always been short, and but as I got to know her, that facade cracked, at least to some degree. She had a sense of humor and liked to share it. So my favorite story that she told me, the one I've remembered all these years later, we saw each other out of school. Now, I was out of college at this point, so quite a few years after I graduated high school. And we saw each other maybe at the grocery store. It's usually where I saw teachers. It was at the grocery store. She said that Miss Akins and she had gone to Ireland. They rented a car, and the cars were stick shifts. This car was a stick shift. So she got in to drive. She knew how to drive a stick. Both of them knew how to drive a stick shift. She got in to drive, and holy cow! Not only was the steering wheel on the right side of the road, but it was the shifter was also backwards to what she was used to. So she related, oh my gosh, I've got to learn this all over again. So, even now, I just like that story. Moving on to history teachers, I had, Mr. Martin, Jim Martin. I had him for social studies, as I recall. He was kind of tall. And if I remember correctly, he would wear sweaters over his shirt and tie. But if you remember better, please chime in. This would have been my freshman year. And, freshman year. Hard to remember that far back. So, he died kind of recently. Within the last 5 years or less. I had Mr. Donahue. I think he was also Jim. Yes, I think it was James Donahue. So I think it was Jim. He did some interesting things. I think it was Civilizations I had with him. Anyway, he would have like these logic puzzles that he would tell us a story, and then we were supposed to figure out the rest. Kind of interesting. Certainly different than any other teacher's class I'd ever taken. He's dead now too. I think he was only 67 when he died. That's a shame. I had Miss Tabor, Mary Ann Tabor. I had her in junior year, and she taught U.S. history. Now, U.S. history, for me, I believe the Vietnam War was the last war that was included. Barely included. In fact, I would say almost not included, because we spent so much time on the Revolutionary War and then so much time on the American Civil War that we didn't really spend quality time on World War I or II or the Korean conflict or the Vietnam conflict. So a blooming shame. But she was very nice. She always wore these polyester suits, the suit coat and the pants. Oh, but polyester. So her suits were typically like navy blue or I think purple. I don't know what's happened to her. I can't find her anywhere online. Nowhere. So if you know what's happened to Miss Tabor, or if you are Miss Tabor, please reach out. I saved my favorite history teacher for last, and that is Mrs. Kalinowski, Sally Kalinowski. Last I knew, she was still alive. Last I knew also, she was volunteering at a local library. When I saw her, this was before COVID, when I saw her, the first thing she said to me is, "You have more gray hair than I do." Well, thank you. Thank you. It was also true. So, I took every course I could with her, every single one. Legal Studies 1, where we were encouraged to be lawyers. The library, which was in B building, and B building is long gone now. I would sit in there all the way to the back, because that's where there was a law book that had case precedent. And I would use that when I was defending my client. I won all but one of my cases. Don't remember the one I lost. C'est la vie. And then I took Legal Studies 2, which was all about tort law. I still don't understand it. I didn't understand it then, and at 59, still don't get it. That's not her fault, though. I doubt that's her fault. That's just me not getting it. Took Vermont history with her. Great course. And I can't remember what else I took with her. The only thing I didn't take with her was this upper level, advanced placement history. Wish I did. Wish I had taken that course. Now, you have to understand, as I said before, I used to teach, primarily adults. But I used to teach, and I loved teaching. I missed teaching. It was a lot of fun. I adopted her teaching style. She was excited in class, excited to teach, excited to be there. She loved taking questions. And if she didn't know, she said, "I don't know." But I'll find out for you. She was also the reason I decided to major in history in college. Something I got to do, which made me happy, was when I found out she was volunteering at a local library. I wrote a note card to her telling her how much she had influenced me, how I used her teaching style, how excited I was to teach, how much fun I'd had, and was able to leave that for her. at the library. When we met, and she had told me, of course, that I had more gray hair than she. Well, it was fun to just chat. So, I thank you so much for hanging out with me as I have certainly flitted down memory lane. This is Patricia. I'm traveling for history. And until I see you again, I hope you have a fabulous day. Thanks so much for